The rational studied, we studied a double of angles. If you remember, sine 2x equals what? 2 sine x cosine x. Cosine 2x, there are 3. Cosine squared x minus sine squared x, or 2 cosine squared x minus 1, or 1 minus 2 sine squared x. Tan 2x. Tan 2x is 2 tan x over 1 minus tan squared x. Then we explain how to write sine 3x in terms of sine x. We explained how to write cosine 3x in terms of cosine x, and we explained tan 3x, how to write it in terms of tan x. I will show you this part. Double angle formula. Sine A plus B, sine, cosine, cosine, sine. Sine A plus A and A, which is 2A, to prove the form. Sine, cosine, cosine, sine. Sine A, cosine A, cosine A, sine A are same. So sine 2A is 2 sine A, cosine A. It's given in the formula sheet. Sine 2x, 2 sine x, cosine x. Sine 2x, 2 sine x, cosine x. So if it is sine 4x, it will be 2 sine 2x, cosine 2x. Double have 4, 2. Sine 4x, split it into 2 sine x, cosine 2x. Sine 6x, 2 sine 3x, cosine 3x. Sine 3x also you can split it into 3 over 2x and 3 over 2x. So we divided the angle by 2. We write 2 sine cosine divided the angle by 2. So if it is x, we can split it into x over 2 and x over 2. So the final formula for sine 2x is 2 sine x cosine x. What about cosine 2x? You can split 2x as x and x. Cosine, cosine, sine, sine. You will get cosine squared minus sine squared. By removing cosine squared and write 1 minus sine squared and simplify your answer, you will get cosine 2x is 2 cosine squared x minus 1. By the same way, cosine 2x is 1 minus 2 sine squared x. So please, for cosine 2x, we have 3. Cosine squared minus sine squared, 2 cosine squared x minus 1, 1 minus sine squared x. By the same way, for tan 2x, 2 tan x, for tan 2x, split it into tan x plus x, tan x plus tan x over 1 tan x tan x. If you simplify it, will be 1 tan 2x is 2 tan x over 1 minus tan squared x. The final form for sine 2x, 2 sine cosine, cosine 2x, cosine squared x minus sine squared x, or 2 cosine squared x minus 1, or 1 minus 2 sine squared x. Tan 2x, 2 tan x over 1 minus tan squared x. So if it is tan 4x, 2, divided the angle by 2 to be tan 2x over 1 minus tan squared 2x. Write sine 3x in terms of sine x. Split 3x into 2x and x. Sine, cosine, cosine, sine. Then sine 2x, remove it. 2 sine, cosine, cosine 2x, remove it. 1 minus 2 sine squared, and simplify to get your answer in terms of sine. Cosine 3x and tan 3x. Today, inshallah, we'll solve more questions about double. In general, before start, sine 2x, cosine 2x, and tan 2x. Question number 1. A worked example from your textbook. Page number 62. When it's given one trigonometric function, we prefer to use right-angled triangle. The given angle x, opposite is 3, hypotenuse is 5, so adjacent will be. Why it's given sin x a negative? Because it's which quadrant? Third. From this triangle, you can get sin x, cosine x, and tan x. Sin x is opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine x adjacent over hypotenuse. Tan x opposite over adjacent. But this angle in the third quadrant, which will be positive in the third quadrant, tan negative, negative. Clear? He asked to find the exact value. We'll try now to use the form of sine 2x. Anyone recognize sine 2x? Memorize it. 2 sine x cosine x. 2 times sine x is negative 3 over 5 times cosine x negative 4 over 5. Then simplify your answer. Your answer will be
24 over 25.
Positive. Negative, negative is positive. Right? Number 2 or part B. Cosine 2x. What is the form of cosine 2x? Whatever any one of the three. Anyone. If you start with cosine squared x minus sine squared x, you will get your answer. Cosine x given, square it, negative 4 over 5, all squared. Sine x, negative 3 over 5, all squared. 16 over 25 minus 9 over 25, 7 over 25. Tan x over 2. Tan x over 2.
2 tan x over 1 minus tan square x.
We don't have a form for tan x over 2. We have tan 2x. Tan 2x equals what?
2 tan x, 1 minus tan over.
2 tan x divided by 1 minus 2 tan squared x. Tan x equals what? 2 tan x over 2 divided by 1 minus tan squared x over 2, right? I will explain this part by 2 ways. By using tan x, we already have it, right? Tan x, we have it 3 over 4. 3 over 4 equals 2 tan x over 2 divided by 1 minus tan squared x over 2. How to find the tan x over 2 as a subject? Cross multiplication. You can use it as u. If you remove this and write u and u squared, you can find u as a solving a quadratic equation, right? If you write 3 cross multiplication, 3 over 4 is equal to u over 1 minus u squared. How to solve this quadratic equation? Cross multiplication. 8u equals 3 minus 3u squared. Then move to the other side, 3u squared plus 8u minus 3 equals 0. Yalla, please solve the quadratic equation. Give me the values of u. What is the values of u? 1 over 3. Negative. Listen. Tan x over 2 is third, or tan x over 2 is negative 3. Angle x in which quadrant? Angle x in third quadrant, which lies between 90 and 180 and 270. This is sine x or tan x or cosine x. So x in the third quadrant. What about x over 2? If you divided the angle by 2, will be 90. 180 divided by 2 is 90, and the 270 divided by 2 is, so will be in the second quadrant. Clear? Angle x in the third. Angle x in the third. So if you get x over 2 will be in which quadrant? Second. Tan in which? Tan in the second quadrant, positive or negative? So which value of these will take? Again. From the given triangle up, look at this part. In case if you have x, how to get, I will explain another method, then back again to the previous one. How to get all trigonometric functions for angle x over 2. If it is x, it's easily to get 2x, 3x, 4x. What about half x? Which trigonometry? I will explain if it is given sine 2x. What is the form of sine 2x? 2 sine x cosine x. So sine x only will be, 2 sine x over 2 cosine x over 2. Is it easily to get sine x over 2 as a subject or cosine x over 2 as a subject? We have x and x over 2. Leave sine x. Go to for cosine 2x. We have 3. Cosine squared x minus sine squared x. Cosine 2x is 2 cosine squared x minus 1. Cosine 2x is 1 minus 2 sine squared x. I will repeat these 3 again, but I will write left side x and right side x over 2. Cosine x is 2 cosine squared x over 2 minus sine squared x over 2. Cosine x is 2 cosine squared x over 2 minus 1. Cosine x is 1 minus 2 sine squared x over 2. It's very important, this identity and this identity. Why? From these two equations, you can get sine x over 2 and cosine x over 2 if you have sine x or cosine x. So when we're talking about x over 2, I can use tan. I used the tan for the previous case. Tan x, I wrote it 2 tan x over 2 divided by 1 minus tan squared x over 2, and solve it as a quadratic equation and get the answer. Why I prefer using cosine? If I wrote the first equation, cosine x is 2 cosine squared x minus 1. If it is x, you have to write x over 2. How to get cosine x over 2 as a subject? 1 plus cosine x, move -1 to the other side, is equal to cosine squared x over 2. Then divided by or times half, same. 1 plus cosine x is equal cosine squared x over 2. Then, by taking the square root for both sides, will be positive or negative square root 1 over 2, 1 plus cosine x. This is the final answer of cosine x over 2. So how to get cosine x over 2 if you have cosine x? Just substitute in this formula. I will repeat it again, but using the second equation. Again, cosine x is 1 minus 2 sine squared x over 2. How to get sine x over 2 as a subject? Because it's a negative, move it to the other side to be positive first. 2 sine squared x over 2 is equal 1 minus cosine x. Then divided by 2 or times half. Sine squared x over 2 is equal 1 over 2, 1 minus cosine x. Then, by taking the square root, sine x over 2 is equal positive or negative 1 over 2, 1 minus cosine x. This is the final form of sine x over 2 and cosine x over 2. By comparing, if I wrote here cosine x over 2 is positive or negative square root have 1 plus cosine x. Exactly both are same. The difference for sine is negative, cosine is positive. If we divide left by left, you will get what? Left side by left side. Sine x over 2 over cosine x over 2, tan x over 2 equal positive or negative square root half cancel with half 1 minus cosine x over 1 plus cosine x. If we back to the question again and try to get tan x over 2 is positive or negative square root of 1 minus cosine x. Cosine x is negative 4 over 5. Negative 4 over 5 divided by 1 plus negative 4 over 5. Give me the final answer, please. One plus 4 over 5 divided by 1 minus 4 over 5. The answer is tan x over 2 is positive or negative 3. Which accepted, which rejected. I explained this part. X between 180 and 270. If we divided both by 2, will be 90 and 135. So second quadrant. Tan in the second quadrant. So the final answer, tan x over 2 is equal to negative 3. Again, this part, very important, how to use x to get half x. If we have x, it's easily to use the form direct to get sine to x, cosine to x, tan to x. But if I ask about half, please remember these four. For sine x is square root half 1 minus cosine x. If I'm talking about cosine x, positive or negative, square root have 1 plus cosine x. But for tan, sorry, half x, I wrote here half x. Tan half x is positive or negative, square root 1 minus cosine x over 1 plus cosine x. Inshallah, we'll finish trigonometry this week. If you finish trigonometry and you didn't study trigonometry, خلاص, no need to study anymore. Differentiation depend in trigonometry. See how many times I said that. Solve the equation sine 2x equals sine x. What is the first step? Split sine 2x, 2 sine x cosine x equals sine x. Then if you divide by sine x, you remove 3 solutions for this equation. Don't try to divide the zero factor for any equation. Zero factor for any equation, if you divide it by sine x, you remove 3 solutions from this equation. 0, 180, and 360. For solving any equation, keep right side 0, then use factorization. For any equation, if you move sine x to the other side, 2 sine x cosine x minus sine x equals 0. Don't try to divide it by a variable. By taking sine x outside, so 2 cosine x minus 1 equal to 0. We have 2 factors. Their product is 0. Maybe the first factor is 0, or 2 cosine x minus 1 is 0. The first one, sine x is 0, 0, 180, 360. If you recognize graph of sine, so the answer is 0 degrees, 180 degrees, 360 degrees. All, it's written in the range from 0 to 360. What about 2 cosine x minus 1? Cosine x as a subject is equal 1 over 2. What is the basic angle? In which quadrant? X is cosine negative 1, 1 over 2. So x is 60. Cosine positive or negative? Positive. In which quadrant? First and fourth. First, fourth, 300. So we have 5 solutions for this equation. Without recognizing, I'll back again to this equation. Without recognizing the graph of sine, how to get the 3 solutions? Step number 1, as usual, shift sign. So x is inverse of 0. So the answer is what? 0. 0 positive or negative? Non-positive, non-negative? I will, by mistake, consider 0 as positive. Consider 0 as positive. Sine positive, in which quadrant? First and second. First done, 0. Second, 180 minus what? So will be 180. Right, 180 plus, minus 0, minus 0. So the answer will be 180. From where we got 360? Equivalent angles. I said after get the 2 solution, started to add a complete rotation, maybe you will find a solution in the range. So 0 plus 360, you will get 360 degrees. Why we consider the 0 is positive, but it's a non-positive or negative? Even if you consider the 0 as a negative. Negative in which? Sine negative in which quadrant? Yes. Negative, third and the fourth. Third, 180 plus 0. You will get it 180. Fourth, 360 minus 0. 360. So the same solution. If you didn't recognize the graph. What is the first step? First step, remove cosine to x and get, we have 3 equations. Which is easier? Save your time. Which is included sine squared only? Because we already have sine x, so we have a quadratic equation, so you can solve it to get sine x. So by removing cosine to x and write what? 1 minus 2 sine squared x is equal plus 3 sine x equals 2. Negative, move it to the other side to V2. You are right, 2 sine squared x minus 3 sine x plus 1 quadratic equation. Solve it by factorization if it is possible. Sine x. As you said, we can remove sine and write u squared. Solve the quadratic equation. Get the two values of x. If it is okay for factorization, if it is not, use quadratic formula. Negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. 1.5. How to get the first solution by using sine x is equal to 1. Shift sine 1. The answer is 90. Sine given positive or negative? Positive. In which quadrant positive? First and second. First done, 90. Even 90 boundaries between first and second. 180 minus 90, same. So we have only one solution. If you recognize graph of sine, will be like this. The value 1 only at 90. Clear why we have here one solution? Sine x equals half. The principal angle is 30, but sine given positive. In which quadrant? First and second. First 30, second 150. So now started to look at the range. What is the range? Oh, by mistake, I solved my equation by using a degree system. Directly, no need to start again. Change it to be in red. This will be pi over 2. This will be pi over 6. This will be 5 pi over 6. How? Just write pi over 180 and simplify your answer. If you simplify it, divided by 3 will be 5, divided by 3 will be 6, 5 pi over 6. Exercise 3C. By using the identities, how to express in terms of only single trigonometric ratio. This is formula of what? 2 sine cosine, sine double. Sine double will be sine double of 28. So will be sine what? 56. 2 cosine squared 34 minus 1. Cosine double of 34. This is cosine 4. 2 of 34. So the answer will be cosine 68. He asked to write it as a single trigonometric ratio. Single trigonometric ratio. The second one, 2 tan. This is form of double of tan. Tan double of 17. So will be tan of 34 degrees.